The camera industry is evolving at an extraordinary pace, with every new launch raising the bar for performance, innovation, and competition. As companies rush to outdo one another, one key question hovers in the minds of professionals and enthusiasts alike: what's next for Canon? The original EOS R1 already made a bold statement, serving as Canon's high-speed flagship mirrorless camera. However, Sony's recent release of the A9 III, equipped with a groundbreaking global shutter sensor, has put Canon on notice. Now the pressure is mounting. Will the upcoming Canon EOS R1 Mark II be the company's answer to this new benchmark? A global shutter sensor isn't just a flashy upgrade, it could fundamentally change how fast-action photography is captured. Photographers who shoot sports, wildlife, or anything involving rapid motion are familiar with the limitations of traditional rolling shutter sensors. These sensors read image data line by line, which can cause visual artifacts such as skewed lines and distorted motion when the subject or the camera moves too quickly. The global shutter changes that completely by capturing the entire image frame at once, eliminating these distortions altogether. That's why the Sony A9 III has generated so much excitement. It's the first full-frame camera to truly make global shutter a practical, real-world tool. Currently, Canon's flagship EOS R1 relies on a very fast stack CMOS sensor, which helps minimize rolling shutter effects, but it's still not a true global shutter. If Canon wants to stay competitive, introducing global shutter technology into the Canon EOS R1 Mark II could be a game-changing move. However, implementing such advanced sensor tech is far from simple. The challenges involved go beyond sensor speed and spill into areas like dynamic range, low light performance, manufacturing complexity, and of course, cost. Interestingly, Canon is no stranger to global shutter sensors. They've actually had this technology in their arsenal for years. Back in 2016, Canon launched the EOS C700Gs PL, a high-end cinema camera equipped with a global shutter. That camera, priced around $40,000, was designed for production studios and not the consumer or enthusiast market. But it showed that Canon could build global shutter tech if they wanted to. Since then, Canon has filed numerous patents relating to global shutter sensors, suggesting they've been quietly refining the technology behind the scenes. So why haven't we seen it in any of their mirrorless flagships yet? The most likely answer comes down to striking the right balance between performance, cost, and image quality. One of the known trade-offs of global shutter sensors is a potential reduction in dynamic range and low light performance. Traditional rolling shutter sensors have more flexibility with exposure timing, allowing them to better capture details in both highlights and shadows. Global shutters, which read the entire image instantly, often struggle to match that level of dynamic range. Noise performance can also suffer, especially in low-light settings. For Canon, a brand highly regarded for its rich color science and strong dynamic range, these compromises could be seen as unacceptable in a flagship model. Then there's the issue of cost. Manufacturing global shutter sensors is significantly more complex and expensive than producing conventional stacked CMOS sensors. If Canon decides to implement this in the R1 Mark II, the price tag could climb even higher than the already premium original R1. That poses a risk. Professional photographers might be willing to invest in such a camera, but if it stretches too far beyond their budget, it could narrow Canon's customer base. Still, the pressure to innovate is undeniable. Sony's A9 III isn't just faster, it's a statement. With a 24.6 MP full-frame global shutter sensor capable of shooting at 120 frames per second with full autofocus and auto exposure, it's a marvel of speed and responsiveness. By comparison, Canon's EOS R1 lags behind in raw shooting speed. And while the original R1 was no slouch, professional shooters who demand the absolute best for high-speed subjects might be swayed by Sony's technological leap. This is where the Canon EOS R1 Mark II must rise to the occasion. Canon has made it clear that the R1 series is all about speed and performance, not megapixel counts. In fact, Canon's imaging executive, Go Takura, recently confirmed that the company isn't planning to release multiple flagship models with different feature sets. If you want high resolution, Canon recommends the R5 series. The R1 is meant to be the speed demon, the ultimate performance tool for action shooters. That means the R1 Mark II has to do it all in one body: blistering speed, class-leading autofocus, reliable battery life, and top-tier image quality. And this is exactly where global shutter technology could make a meaningful difference. Pairing Canon's outstanding dual-pixel CMOS AF system with a global shutter could yield a camera with nearly instantaneous response times and zero rolling shutter distortions, ideal for high-stakes sports, fast wildlife, and even unpredictable news events. However, the success of such a combination depends entirely on whether Canon can implement it without sacrificing the dynamic range and low light capabilities that users depend on. After all, speed is important, but not at the cost of image quality. Video performance is another area where the Canon EOS R1 Mark II could benefit tremendously from a global shutter. Filmmakers working in high-speed or high-motion environments, think motorsports, action scenes, or handheld documentary shooting, often deal with warping or skewing from rolling shutters. A global shutter would solve this problem instantly, potentially making the R1 Mark II not just a photo powerhouse, but also a serious tool for video professionals. Canon has a rich heritage in the cinema space, and bringing some of that technology into the mirrorless lineup could attract a whole new segment of creators. But Canon isn't just watching Sony, Nikon is also gearing up. Following their acquisition of Red Digital Cinema, Nikon now has access to advanced sensor technology, including global shutter designs. Combined with their existing ties to Sony's sensor division, Nikon is in a strong position to adopt global shutter technology in its future flagship cameras. That puts even more pressure on Canon to move quickly. The next few years could mark a turning point where global shutter sensors become standard in high-end mirrorless cameras. If Canon doesn't act fast, they risk being left behind in the segment they once dominated. Ultimately, the Canon EOS R1 Mark II represents more than just a refresh. It's an opportunity for Canon to reassert its leadership in the pro mirrorless space. The company has the expertise, the technology, and the legacy. What it needs now is a decisive move. Integrating a global shutter sensor, one that doesn't compromise on image quality, could be the leap forward that sets Canon apart once again. But if they fall short, either in performance or by pricing themselves out of reach, it could give Sony and Nikon the edge they need to reshape the professional market. Canon has built a strong reputation for reliability, image quality, and innovation. Photographers trust the brand for its natural colors, ergonomic designs, and consistent results. But the world of photography is changing rapidly. Speed, AI-driven autofocus, computational imaging, and hybrid video capabilities are becoming essential. A well-executed Canon EOS R1 Mark II with a global shutter could not only solve the lingering issues of motion distortion but also usher in a new era of high-performance imaging, one where Canon doesn't just keep up, but leads. As the anticipation builds, photographers around the world are waiting to see what Canon will unveil. If the EOS R1 Mark II lives up to its potential, with blazing speed, world-class autofocus, clean low-light performance, and zero rolling shutter, it could become the definitive camera for professional action shooters. Canon doesn't need to match Sony spec for spec. What they need is to deliver a complete and well-balanced tool that feels unmistakably Canon, yet boldly future-forward. So the question remains, will the Canon EOS R1 Mark II finally bring global shutter to the mainstream professional market? If Canon plays its cards right, this next flagship could redefine the high-speed camera segment and set a new gold standard for years to come.